Hi everyone, this is Alexandra Mason from Mason Design Build. Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be talking about working with knit fabrics. They stretch, they have different types of fabric, interlocking, knit, ponte, some have even lycra on them. So you should definitely know a couple of things about how to work with knits. So first, get a walking foot. I cannot stress how useful this is. It's a presser foot that helps you feed your fabric through your sewing machine from the top and also through the bottom. It just helps make sure that your knits are not stretching and moving all over the sewing machine. So definitely get a walking foot. Also, make sure that you are using the right needle for your sewing machine, especially if you're working with jersey or stretch knits. I usually like these Schmetz needles. They come in stretch and also jersey size, so I definitely use those when I'm using my knits fabric. Or if you don't have needles, or if you're using what came with your sewing machine, it's usually a universal needle, so you can also use that. But I definitely recommend that you use the right needle for your fabric. That is a big one. Also, make sure that you have the right tension on your sewing machine. And when you are working with knits, it is good that you use a zigzag stitch. I usually tend to use a 2.5 stitch on my machine, and also make sure that you grab a scrap piece of your knit and that you test out the tension on your machine, because you don't want to have any ripples or puckers. Definitely use that. Usually with knits, it's good that you use a zigzag, and usually that you use a zigzag when you're doing a horizontal stitch. So usually anything such as like your shoulders, your collars, or things that are just going sideways, kind of like your hem, because you definitely want those stitches to stretch. If you do a straight stitch, beware that your stitches eventually will pop if you lock your stitches, which you should always do. But if you do a straight stitch, eventually they will pop. Usually I tend to do a straight stitch for anything that's horizontal, kind of like my side seams, but that's because I also use an overlocker. So make sure you use a zigzag stitch when you're working with knits. And then finishing your knits, you don't really have to finish your knits. They do not unravel like some woven fabrics, so that is wonderful. Again, this is kind of like something that's not finished. But if you do, you can either use an overlocker, or you can also use a zigzag stitch at the on your raw edges. You don't have to finish them again. But if you want to finish them, you can do an overlocker or a serger. Or you can also grab a pair of pinking shears and just cut your seam allowances. And that's it. That is a couple of tips of working with knits. I also want to give you a book about working with knits in case you want to keep working a little bit more. It's a book by Tilly and the Buttons. They are out in the United Kingdom, but she wrote an excellent book on working with knit fabrics. It also has a couple of patterns and lots of tips. So definitely check that out, and I'm going to go ahead and put a link to it on the description. So happy knit sewing, and if you liked all of these tips in our videos, please ring the bell and subscribe. Thanks again.